Welcome back to the United Stand, the afternoon show. Today, on today's show, we have Brandon Williams. He's finally left Manchester United, but it is on a loan to Ipswich. Whether that can be made permanent, there's a lot of intricacies in that deal that we're going to go through. Man United, you know, the structure of the deals that they do, they're just not the best, are they? Especially without goings, and we're going to get into that. Højlund debut delay. Højlund could be missing for Forest, and even the game further after the international break, Arsenal away, he could be out for as well. We initially thought he could be on the bench for the Forest game on Saturday. Looks like that's going to be delayed. We'll talk about the repercussions of that and how Manchester United are going to deal with these fixtures piling up with not an out-and-out striker ready to go. We know we can't rely on Martial. Also, news coming in that our new keeper could be on his way to Manchester United with a deal agreed in principle. Johnny Evans could be securing a one-year contract at Manchester United, and a little bit more news as well to come throughout the show about Hannibal Medri, a few other youngsters, and a little bit of an update on Amrabat as well. I'm going to get into this Amrabat deal because it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. The club are treating like getting Amrabat in is the same ilk of going and trying to get Mbappe over the line from PSG, or going and trying to get, you know, Neymar across the line from PSG, who's now gone to Saudi. But they're treating it like it's some £100 million+ player, that it's a deal that has to be worked and worked and worked. It's like the De Jong saga all over again, but in this instance, Amrabat actually wants to come. But it's not. It's a straightforward deal. The player's got a year left on his contract, and the price is around €29 million. There's no excuse for it, but we're going to be getting into it as well. Thank you everyone for joining us on the show today. Join us on Højlund debut delay. It's frustrating. It just feels like one thing after another with this football club at the moment. It really does. I've said it before and I'll say it again. As much as I want Amrabat, as much as we need Amrabat, and as much as it is a straightforward deal for Man United to complete, I don't see Man United making any other transfers incomings apart from the second choice keeper that we're going to get into in a little bit. But first of all, I'll get into the Brandon Williams news and what it entails for him to be leaving Manchester United. So, Fabrizio Romano says Brandon Williams' loan move from Manchester United to Ipswich Town includes a buy option. If anyone's not seen, the reveal video is out. He'll be working with Kieran McKenna at Ipswich, who currently stand top of the Championship. Bear in mind it is only a couple of weeks in, probably a few weeks in now, but Ipswich are top of the table in the Championship. Can I just say as well, no disrespect to Brandon Williams whatsoever, but anyone remember when, you know, he was starting games under Solskjaer, he was benching Luke Shaw at times, and everyone thought this is, you know, going to be the next up-and-coming talent in Man United that can make it into the first team, and he's just completely fell off a cliff, which is frustrating for us, all probably frustrating for him. But the best thing is for him to be playing first team football, of course, and working with McKenna, who's worked with before, seems like a good kind of deal for him to do. But with Williams, I don't understand why we've done a loan and not just a complete sell. He's not going to come back to Manchester United and be a first teamer. It's just not going to happen for him. So why don't we get money in for him now? Why don't we get that deal done? And I don't want to hear their excuses that nobody wants to buy him. People would want to buy Brandon Williams. Of course they would. You know, he's not good enough for United, but he could be good enough for bottom half of the Prem teams, also top of the Championship teams. If he can be good enough for that level. I thought in Norwich he did pretty well when Norwich were in the Prem. Someone out there will buy him. Someone will, but we've just not chosen to go down that route, or we've not been able to get it done, which again kind of highlights how poor Manchester United are in getting these outgoings done, like a loan with an option to buy. And here's the best part about it, coming from Samuel Luckhurst, is that in order for Manchester United to receive a fee for Brandon Williams next summer, the club will have to activate the one-year extension in his current deal, which runs until next summer. So he's actually out of contract. We need to activate his one-year extension in order to get a fee from Ipswich Town if they do decide to go ahead and buy him. It's just a messy situation. I would honestly not be against just letting him go on a free. I know that doesn't work under the whole, you know, system that Manchester United have where they want to get fees for players, but this never works out anyway. Remember when we gave Eric Bailly a new contract so we could get a fee for him, and now we're struggling to get him out. It looks like Man United have to pay for him to leave, pay off his wages. And I've just seen a really good chat in the chat as well, in the live chat, saying wages are a big issue for Brandon Williams. He's on, if I'm not mistaken, 60 grand a week, Brandon Williams. That's the contract that he was given. 60 grand a week. Not many, you know, that's probably really top of the tree for a lot of the clubs that would be interested in bringing Brandon Williams in. And that is a massive off-putting factor to other teams. this is what you get when, you know, you get a few good performances out of a player and then you reward them with a huge contract. And it was huge at the time for Brandon Williams. I think he was 19 years old and he'd come into the first team, and next thing you know, he's got given a 60 grand a week contract. It shouldn't have happened. He should, fair enough, you know, extending his contract, but 60 grand a week, it should never have happened. I'm hoping Man United learn the lesson in this, but who knows? Maguire's another reason. Maguire's wages is a reason we can't get him out of the club. It keeps happening for Man United. Eric Bailly, another reason why we can't get him out of the club. It's a consistent thing that keeps going on. And obviously, this comparison is not, I'm not saying, you know, we're going to have to let Garnacho go, because we're absolutely not. But I think with Garnacho's new contract that he's just been given, we've put him on, I think it's around 35 grand a week, and then an option for, in like a year or 2 years' time, for us to renegotiate that wage, considering how well he's done. That's the exact way we should have been doing these contracts and deals, because even though Garnacho looks brilliant now, you never know what's going to happen in the future. I think he will go on to be a top player for Man United. I can see it in Garnacho, you can see it there. But that's the way that we should be doing about these deals as well. So, yeah, Brandon Williams out on loans at Ipswich Town, joining McKenna, who, funnily enough, is doing very, very well. Remember all the times McKenna and Carrick got bantered throughout the fan base for not being good enough coaches. They're both doing excellent. Maybe it was Ollie that was a problem. It was the main man who was a problem all along, Ollie and his coaching staff. And people talking about Woodward giving out these horrendous deals. Well, it is the case. That is what happened regarding what happened with Man United with wages in the past. Woodward was horrendous at it, and this is what we've got to blame now. But what the good thing is he's out the club, he's playing first team football. Hopefully, if Brandon Williams does well, it means that we then can, you know, completely get him off the books next summer, whether that is through just him going on a free, which I'd be tempted to go down that route of, or it is him leaving on a permanent deal with some sort of fee to Ipswich Town or whatever. If he does well, whoever wants to come in and buy him. But it's important that we get these outgoings gone. But again, an outgoing that isn't going to go towards anything, because it is only a loan move. So it's basically nothingness in terms of our transfer budget, which is obviously, as you can see, the title, more delays. And on more delays, this is a frustrating one for Manchester United and a frustrating one for the player himself, a frustrating one for Erik ten Hag. I'm just, honestly, I feel like hitting my head against a brick wall sometimes when news comes out about this club. It's coming out that Rasmus Højlund's Manchester United debut may be delayed until after September, their September international break, and that is coming from Samuel Luckhurst, who obviously has, say it all the time, connections to the club. So Højlund's debut may be delayed until after the September international break. It's frustrating. It really is frustrating. I honestly can't catch a break with this club. Every single day it just seems to be more negative news, and I was so excited for Højlund, you know, to come in for this Forest game, and I think a lot of people were, because we were absolutely, you know, we were on our knees basically for a striker that could come in and actually play a number 9, especially of how poor Rashford's 2 performances have been. So to see that at this stage that Højlund still isn't ready, it is super frustrating. I actually have had word in my ear as well that Mark Goldbridge, you know, to call him tier 1, has reported that, well, not reported, has informed us that Rasmus Højlund will not be back for Forest as well. So looks like Rasmus Højlund will not be part of the Forest game that as initially came out by Samuel Luckhurst. I'm gutted, and I'll say it again, it shouldn't be all this pressure on Højlund. There shouldn't be all this pressure on Højlund, because we should have another striker in. But let's put it out there. Ronaldo left, I feel like it was November, was it October, November? Last year, 2022. Since then, we have not had an elite level striker at Manchester United to play as a centre forward. We've not had it. We've had the whole transfer window. We've got Højlund in, who's a good striker, but he's a promising young player. He should not have the weight on his shoulders to be Manchester United's saviour at number 9. He just shouldn't have that weight on his shoulders. We've been wanting him to do that, and that's why people want him back for Forest, and that's why I want him back for Forest, and that's why everyone wants him back for Forest, because of how bad Rashford's been the last couple of games as number 9. Now it looks like it's going to be delayed even further. Potentially, he's probably going to miss the Arsenal game as well. And it's just like, why? I blame Man United. I blame Man United, the fact we don't have a number 9 in place. And a lot of people say, well, Martial looks like he's getting back fit. Martial will get injured. He always does. We're in this cycle where we're going to be losing points after points after points at the start of the season, because look at our fixture run. It doesn't look positive. I'm worried about it. And if all we've got is Rashford to go off at number 9, it's not looking promising. And that's not even me trying to have a dig at Rashford. Rashford isn't a number 9. He's a left winger, and that's why he should be playing. But it's like hitting your head against a brick wall, which I've said before. Geordie says, still paying the price for Woodsworth's mess, but Beth, don't forget Murto madness, awful week for the fans. Murto sadness. We don't use Murto madness around here, we use Murto sadness. Let me see if I can get exactly what Mark said on here on... Yes, so, oh no. I got it. From Mark, I got that wrong in my ear. This is what happens when messages are relayed a little bit, you know, over the course of the headset. But according to Goldbridge, there's still a chance that Hojlund could be involved at the weekend. I got it relayed. I thought I got it relayed. I probably misheard that he will be out for the weekend. But according to Goldbridge, tier one round here, tier 1. We all remember 90% Dion Club. I'm joking. But according to Goldbridge, it looks like the player could still be involved for Forest at the weekend. So that is a sort of slight positive. But to be honest, I don't see him playing a major part in it. We'll have to wait and see on this one. But it's frustrating. Who starts? Do you risk Martial? Do you miss Martial and put him at 9? Considering he can't stay fit and usually gets injured quite quickly. Do you bring Martial on in the last 20 minutes and start with Rashford? Do you go with Sancho false 9? The options are very, very bleak. And again, not to kind of harp on this tune that we're not ever going to be able to go down, but there is things Man United could have done in this transfer window to make it a lot easier on Erik ten Hag and make it a lot more positive going into the start of the season. And we already heard the news that if Qatar would have been in charge for the summer transfer window, it would have been very, very different. Imagine a world where Qatar comes in before the summer transfer window, or the new ownership comes in before the summer transfer window. You manage to get Højlund, and you also manage to get either an Osimhen or a Harry Kane. Harry Kane goal and assist on his debut for Bayern Munich in the Bundesliga, not in the Cup, in the Bundesliga. Osimhen, elite level number 9. And they could have come in and taken the burden of that number 9 role. They would have relished in it, especially Harry Kane, Premier League proven. You know, it would have been huge for Manchester United, and it would have been the right thing to do. We need an elite level striker. Look at Manchester City with Erling Haaland. Even with Newcastle, they've got Callum Wilson and Isaac, who are both top level strikers, in my opinion. I think Callum Wilson's underrated. And Isaac just looks like he's, heading to greatness with the talent he's got. And you'll probably look at Arsenal and think they're not dealing with, an embarrassment of riches as a number 9, but they've still got options. They've got options to play. And Gabriel Jesus has won a Premier League, and he's not fit, but they're back in training now, probably in time for Man United's game against him. So I don't take any excuses off the transfer team. I really don't. We should have had a top-level number 9 in. We shouldn't have had to rely on Højlund to be fit, and this is the situation we're in. We've signed a striker who looks extremely promising, and I hope can be brilliant for Manchester United, and I see a high ceiling for him in the future. But the reality is, it could be, 3, maybe even 4 games have gone past where Højlund's not been able to play for Manchester United at the start of the season. Who knows, if Højlund would have played against Spurs, it could have been a different story. So you look at this and you think, this could be costing us points. This could be costing us going into the later end of the season. And it's massively, massively frustrating. Spencer Price says, hi Beth, keep up the good work, especially your Mason Greenwood show is impressive. Isn't there already way too much pressure on Højlund? Thank you, Spencer, for your super chat. I appreciate that. Yeah, they had to go and buy somebody else. They had to go and buy another striker. The pressure on Højlund is ridiculous. He doesn't deserve that pressure on him. Of course, any player playing for Man United is going to have the pressure on their backs, but he's 20 years old, and it was his first major season in the top 5 leagues last year with Atalanta. To expect him to come in and solve all our problems is so naive, and it's just not going to happen. Shane Matthews, member for 13 months, we need to risk playing Martial to get the best out of Rashford on the wings. I get that, but then what happens if Martial has to come off half-time injured? And then we're in a situation where we have nobody but Rashford and Sancho for the next couple of weeks. What if there's another delay with Højlund's injury? The management of Martial is so crucial within this period. And again, I also think if Martial would have come on earlier in the Spurs game, before it got to 2-0, obviously he was waiting on the sidelines, him and Palestri, as it became 2-0, that game could have been a different outcome. But it's about knowing the times when to manage Martial, and it's a difficult one for a player that's constantly injured. And we've got, Shane Matthews coming in there. I've read that one out. And Glenny Boy, it's madness that Murto is still in a job. Yeah. We know he's not capable of managing a transfer team at the top level. We've all seen that as evidence this summer. We sort of saw the evidence last summer in the rushing around towards the back end of the window, signing Anthony for £90 million, and the De Jong saga going out for as long as it did, him being pictured in Juventus speaking to Rabiot, then it not happening, the Arnautovic stories. We saw glimpses of Murto sadness last summer, but this summer's really put into perspective how poor this transfer team is. Not only, securing targets to ensure that we're covered across the pitch, but most importantly, they've not been able to secure the outgoings that we need for the reinvestment into the squad. If we don't get Amrabat, it's because we can't sell players. Simple as that. It's because we can't sell players. And Amrabat could be so crucial in this window. Why have we not got another striker in? Please, someone tell me why. Apparently, Erik ten Hag has been knocking on the door asking for another striker for the last week. That's the news that's been coming out, saying, we can't just rely on Højlund. Nothing's happening. You're not telling me that we don't have the money to go and sign, even if it's not, the big star name. But you're telling me we don't have the money to sign Amrabat for €29 million right now in the window. I just don't believe it. I just don't believe it. I struggle to believe it. But on the kind of situation that we have right now in terms of money, outgoings, where we should prioritise it for the rest of the season, rest of the transfer window, going into the season, where we should prioritise our money. It's come out from Plettigol, Plettigol, obviously Florian, who is the Sky Sports reporter, has come out and said, understand that Vlachodimos has received an official offer from Manchester United. He could sign a contract until 2028. It's a verbal agreement in principle. Price valuation is around €15 million. Ten Hag wants in, but there is no final decision. Vlachodimos would be ready to challenge Onana. Lastly, I don't think he would be challenging Onana. Onana is obviously going to be first choice. And €15 million it would cost. There's an agreement in principle for backup goalkeeper Vlachodimos. He actually has been first choice for Benfica. I was speaking to somebody who watches the Portuguese league a lot. Obviously, I've not watched much of him because I've not watched much of Benfica and been focusing on their goalkeeper. I've watched Benfica in the Champions League in a couple of games, but it's not someone I have massive knowledge of. But I've been watching, apparently he was the second best keeper in that league after Costa last year. But Vlachodimos for €15 million to be a backup keeper, to me that instantly just is a waste of money. The why it's a waste of money, you ask me? Because if we've got €15 million to use, we should be putting that towards a midfielder or a striker. Simple as that. Of course, it's good to have a good backup keeper, but if that's what we're spending the rest of our money on in the window, what is our obsession with backup goalkeepers? What is the obsession? It's every year there's a new one. Last year it was Dubravka, then it was Butland, then it's now Vlachodimos coming into the works. We've been looking at so many backup keepers. Why? €15 million, why? I beg to ask the question. Obviously, I'm not the one on the training ground making these decisions and I'm not seeing these players week in, week out. But surely we could have just kept Kovar as the backup option, who looked very good in pre-season and looked highly capable and has had experience last year on loan at Sparta Prague and winning the league with them and has got the experience to probably come in. We have Tom Heaton, who's sustained a minor injury but should be back relatively soon, who I think is good enough to be the backup choice keeper for Manchester United, considering Onana will probably play every single game. Look at how many times Butland or Dubravka got to play last year compared to De Gea. If you look at kind of the odds on how many games Vlachodimos is going to get, the question's asked, €15 million, when we're really struggling, when you look at how much we need a defensive midfielder, when you look at how much we need another striker. I just sit there and question why. And I wouldn't be annoyed. It's nothing on Vlachodimos at all. And I wouldn't be annoyed at this signing if we already had Amrabat in and we had another striker to compete with Højlund, and you're looking towards the end of the window and you think, right, what can we do to, ensure this squad is at the level that we need? And you think, you know what, we can go and probably get a backup keeper to upgrade on Heaton being there as backup, and he's just got an injury. We could probably go and do that. But to go into the last weeks of the window when we massively need Amrabat, we massively could do with getting a striker in, even if it's on loan, and to spend that last little bit of money on Vlachodimos, the mind boggles. The mind boggles. Chris says, Beth, everyone has been saying this morning that Onana is going to AFCON. I have heard that. I don't think it's going to happen. I've not heard it from a reliable source yet on Onana going to AFCON. I think it's just rumours circulating. I don't think he will go to AFCON. If he does, I'll be gutted, because we were told that he'd retired from international football, but I don't think he will go to AFCON, but we'll have to see. DK says, Beth, read today that Onana is returned to international duty, but I agree priority should be a midfield and a striker, arguably a centre-back. I read that about Onana as well. I haven't heard it from a reliable source yet, so I'm going off the basis right now that Onana's not going on international duty, and therefore I think a backup keeper would be ridiculous. Shane Matthews says, use the €15 million to loan Felix. Could have done. Could have done with that. It's not the worst shout. Or use it to actually go and get, you know, a midfielder that we need. €29 million for Amrabat, and we can't get it done. Oh, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it hurts my head. But what are your thoughts on getting a backup keeper in for €15 million? What are your thoughts? Get it in the chat. Get it in the chat right now, because for me, there's two glaringly obvious things that need fixing before the likes of a backup keeper. It's like, for example, I'm going to use an analogy. Just call me Analogy Bridge, Beth Bridge, whatever you want to call me. I'm going to use an analogy. For example, say it's my brother's birthday, and I've said, you know what, for your birthday, I'm going to bake you a cake. I want to bake you a cake for your birthday, and you know, I'm going to give it to you for birthday. It's your birthday present. You've got the, you know, you're looking to get the ingredients in. You're looking to get the ingredients. You've got kind of the base ingredients. You've got the flour, you've got the sugar, but you're missing the eggs that kind of hold it all together. You're missing the eggs, you're missing the whisk to whisk it, and you need to go and get them things, because without that, the cake's not going to go and get built. It's not going to be there. The structures aren't in place for the cake to be made. So instead of prioritising that with your last little bit of change that you've got in your pocket that you need to go to the shop with, instead of prioritising, you know, the eggs and the whisk that's actually going to bring this cake together into fruition, you actually instead spend that last little bit of money on the candles for the top of it. That's how it feels, because obviously candles, you know, are good for a birthday cake. You need them, and obviously a backup keeper it's good to have throughout the season. You do kind of need it there, and you need it there. But realistically, what's more important, the candles on top of the cake, or the cake actually being there in the first place? And for Manchester United to kind of progress, they need the actual first team and the squad players that are going to be playing week in, week out to be at the top level. We need the depth there. So we need, you know, the eggs and the whisk, the Amrabat and another striker, rather than what we need, the candles. I'd even argue a backup keeper is a lighter to light the candles, potentially. But you get my point. That last little bit of money in the shop, and what do you prioritise? Because you don't have anything then, really. Because what's the point of having a backup keeper, you know, in case, God forbid, anything went wrong, if you're already struggling with your first team? And that's how it feels out with Manchester United now. Should we spend 15 mil on a backup keeper? It says pounds on the poll, but it is euros. Let me know. I would say no on this one. And you know, guys, I love my keepers. But looking at everything else we need, I would be a no on that. Glenny Boy says, did it wind anyone else up when they cut the camera to Dean and Harry chatting during the Wolves game? Camera did the conversation. I'm better than him. I didn't see it because I was in the Old Trafford for the Wolves game, but I didn't see it. But it is frustrating, kind of seeing. It's not frustrating seeing them chatting, because obviously, you know, players are going to do that. What frustrates me is the fact that Dean Henderson, who isn't going to be used throughout this season because he doesn't want to be here and he wants to go, taking up a space on the bench and taking up money that could be used, because he should be going to Crystal Palace. That deal should have got done. The deal to Forest should have got done. He should be out the door by now. And what is frustrating is seeing Harry Maguire, because he's sitting on the bench for a wage right now. He had the perfect opportunity to go and be West Ham captain and play week in, week out and prove himself, you know, to prove himself in his career, really, because he's not done it in Man United, and to keep his place in the England squad, but instead he's chosen to sit on the bench. And that, again, is the reason why we've not been able to go for Pavard or Todibo. So, yeah, it does annoy me seeing them after what's happened within our window. And Chris says the first team reminds you of Liverpool the season after they tried getting the quad, flat, tired and nothing in the reserve. I hope not. I really hope not. But anyway, that's the story on Vlachodimos. We'll continue to update you as that progresses. But obviously, coming out from Pletico is very good journalist. So I would say there was probably quite a little bit in that. Wanted to bring in as well to the show. This was an update earlier on this morning, but I wanted to bring it to you guys to get a discussion on it. And Romano, again, kind of reinstated the fact what he's been saying over the course of the last couple of weeks. United need to sell at least one more player after Fred, which is why things are moving slowly for the midfielder. The club's intention remains to make room and find another one to find the right midfielder. Right, so for me, there's no question that Fred wasn't good enough for the long term. There was no question that he wasn't good enough for the long term. But if you're looking at the future of Manchester United, you had to replace that profile. You had to replace the player that, you know, could come in alongside Casemiro and make that defence a little bit more defensively reassured. The player that could nip at people's heels, get the ball off them and play it on. Fred wasn't good enough in the long term. He was inconsistent. But you don't sell Fred if you don't replace him. You just don't do it. And if we're not going to get Amrabat, we should have kept Fred. Fred could have been used in the last couple of games, and I'm sure he would have been. McTominay's barely had a sniff. Shouldn't we have sold McTominay? 30 million was on the table for him, £30 million. But why didn't we sell him? Because he's from the academy? I don't know. So again, Man United come into question and come under fire because we've not replaced Fred. And his profile was very unique within the Manchester United midfield. It was. And getting Amrabat in covers it. I'm not saying Amrabat and Fred are similar players because they are different. But it covers that position of defensive reassurance in the midfield and someone that can nick the ball off players and play passes in through the lines. Fred wasn't a brilliant passer and he wasn't technically, you know, the top of the tree either, and he was inconsistent, but you need to replace that profile. He would have come on in the Spurs game and made a difference. I have no doubts about that. That's what Amrabat would have done. Why haven't we done it? If we finish the transfer window without getting a replacement in for Fred, it's ridiculous. So to hear that we need to offload another midfielder, wasn't Fred the most used midfielder after Casemiro, Eriksen and Bruno last year? Wasn't he significant towards the squad? Say if we'd sold Donny van der Beek, right? Say we'd sold Donny van der Beek and we're hearing we need to sell at least another midfielder to get another one in, basically to get Amrabat in. I'd be more understandable because Donny van der Beek had basically no role to play last season. He wasn't a significant member of the squad, and this is no disrespect to Donny, but it's true. And him leaving doesn't really have any effect on the team. Fred leaving does have an effect because he was playing, and he was playing in crucial games. That Man City game where he marked De Bruyne out the game, crucial. So he was needed. So it doesn't make sense to me that premise that this transfer team has got, that, you know, it's fine to let Fred go. We don't need to replace him. We need to sell another one. They're the ones that, when they're gone, we can get the replacement in. It's just not true because he was probably the most contributing midfielder last season after Casemiro, Eriksen and Bruno. So it's frustrating. It's super, super frustrating. Last little bits of news coming in. This is an interesting one for you, what I saw on Twitter. Onana made 11 saves and prevented 1.5 goals in the Premier League so far this season. Only Leno has managed more saves and prevented more goals. Apparently he's only good with his feet, I'm hearing. So Onana, that's a positive. He was a great signing. He's been very good so far. I feel unfortunate with the team that's playing around him right now because we just don't look good enough in the slightest, but that's where we're at. Tom Heaton also was asked on who was the best finisher at Manchester United, and he said, Anthony Martial. He can bend it, he can whip it, he can go with power, he can lift it over you. He's got that composure, he's got that calmness in front of goal that makes it difficult for the keeper. The calmness in front of goal, we've seen Martial. I've always said, for a striker of any level, you really know how quality they are if they can pull off like a dink over the top of the keeper, or if they can pull off that loft over the top of the keeper to when they kind of come out and get it. And we've seen Martial do that before. Not all players are capable of doing it. I would say, you know, there's quite a few players that aren't capable of doing it. Only the top class players can really perfect that to the level, and Martial can do it. And like Tom Heaton said, there is no kind of denying that Martial is a good player. And talking about who's going to be our front three for Forest, you've got to kind of bring him into consideration. But it's his injuries that's just super, super frustrating. And also, just to put it out there as well, the fact that in 2023 the keeper's being asked who's the best finisher at Man United and it's still Martial speaks volumes for how much we're lacking in the striker department. It really does. It speaks volumes, and it speaks volumes at how thin we are across the striker department, because the fact that Martial's still the best finisher at the club, at this point in time, is again an indicament into how poor Man United have been at recruiting the role for the centre forward. Varun says Martial and Pellistri need to start. Well, talking about that to finish up the show, I just want to talk about how I would kind of go into the Forest game, considering Mount's injury and considering Højlund probably is still injured. So I would go with Onana in goal, of course, and get in your comments as well what you guys think and what players you would bring into the starting 11 and what changes you would make. Because I know a lot of people are frustrated about the Spurs game and the Wolves game, of course. But what someone just asked me is, do we know how long Højlund could be delayed for? Well, Looker said that Man United's Højlund's debut could be delayed until after the September international break. So after the international break in September, it looks like, but Goldbridge has informed us that he might be involved at the weekend, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Tier 1 Goldbridge. But what I would do for the Forest game to wrap up the show. So I would go with Onana in goal. Obviously, he's probably been our best player in the first 2 games of the season, which says a lot if your keeper is the best player. I would go with... I'd probably go with Dalot at right back, you know. And I think Wan-Bissaka's been good. I really do. But if Ten Hag wants to play the more inverted role, I would go with Dalot at right back if that's where he wants to go down that route of. But I don't mind between Wan-Bissaka or Dalot, but I'd probably maybe give Dalot a run out. Varane and Martinez, of course, as the centre-backs. But to be honest with you, Martinez needs to step up his game or else Lindelof will be knocking on the door. And I'm the biggest fan of Martinez, but that's just how it's looked over the past 2 games of Martinez. He's looked a little bit slow off the mark. Left back, I would go with Shaw, even though Shaw's been another poor performer over the last 2 games. But we have no one else. Mossy is still injured, I think. Across the middle, you've got to go with Casemiro, Eriksen, Bruno. Obviously, Mount's injured, which you look to the bench and the only midfield option you have is McTominay. You don't have Fred. You don't have Kobe Mainoo. The only midfield option we have is McTominay from the bench. So I would probably go... You'd have to go with Casemiro, Eriksen and Bruno. So it's mental to me that how thin our midfield is actually looking. It's looking so thin, and that's just with the one injury from Mount. And you know, people can say they wanted Eriksen to come in or they wanted Mount to be dropped, but people celebrating Mount's injury honestly disgusts me, because Mount was actually probably our best player in the first half against Spurs. All the players around him are massively letting him down. Also, he's not grown into the role fully right now. He's not, and he needs to kind of keep going with that role to kind of fully get to grips with it and the chemistry to come together between Casemiro, Mount and Bruno. But it is a big blow. It's a big blow losing Mount. It really is, especially when you look at the thinness of our midfield. So I'd go with Casemiro, Bruno, Eriksen, because you'd have to. And then across the front 3, which I think... And someone said, what about Donny? Donny was left out of the squad against Spurs because his attention is on getting a move, so I doubt he'd be moved back in for this game, but who knows. And also it came out from Samuel Luckhurst that Hannibal Mejbri is in contention to make the matchday squad for Nottingham Forest fixture on Saturday. So again, having to bring youth players in, which I'm all for getting youth into the team, but the fact we've got to resort to that because of our lack of midfield depth is frustrating. Akhil Aravind says McTominay increased his price by 5 million on Saturday and United sell him for 30 mil if he can increase his price. Thank you for your super chat, Akhil. I doubt he's going to increase his price on Saturday, but we'll see. You've got to be hopeful, haven't you? But my front 3, and I've had a lot to say about the front 3 because I don't think they've had, I think a lot of the criticism has come onto the midfield over the last 2 games, and the front 3 have been absolutely woeful. They've been appalling. They really have. They've been shocking. Shocking when you look at Manchester United's level. And I'm not dressing it up or dressing it down. You've got to call a spade a spade. Anthony has looked terrible. Honestly, he looks nowhere near worth the 90 million price tag. And I've been patient with Anthony. But he's looked terrible. Constantly just cutting in, making the wrong decisions. And them bending shots now. My patience is wearing thin with them because none of them are going in. It's like I think it's like 1 in 74 shots are going in from Anthony at this point, as a stat that I read. Actually, I've got it here. Since Anthony scored 3 Premier League goals back-to-back from his opening 3 games, he scored 1 Premier League goal since then, with 4 goals from 78 shots. 4 goals from 78 shots from Anthony in the Premier League. So he needs dropping, in my opinion. Rashford up front just hasn't been working at all. Looks probably quite disinterested up there. And yeah, of course, I understand the point. You've got to do a job for United when you're a forward player. Whatever the manager asks you to play, you do. And Rashford has been, but it must be frustrating for him not being able to play his favourite position on the left. And he's looked a shadow of himself in that number 9 role. Then on the left, Garnacho looked very good in glimpses in the first half against Spurs and then fell away. Obviously, against Wolves, just looked like he wasn't ready to be a starter and didn't look like himself at all. So none of them have been prolific. Going into the game on Saturday, what I would do is I'd put Rashford on the left, Martial up front, because surely he's got to be fit now. He played in the Spurs game, and then he also played in the friendly behind closed doors at Carrington. So which we did get beat 3-0 on, which is how embarrassing is that. But Martial through the middle, I think we have to. Even if he has to come off, I think we have to start him down the middle, and then I would actually play Pellistri down the right-hand side, because for me, he's looked the most promising attacker so far. Coming onto the pitch, always looks like he's going to create something, gets to the byline, gets the cross in, dribbles, it's speed, sucks players into fouls. In my opinion, should have had a penalty in the Spurs game. I think it's time he gets given a chance. I really do. Why not? You know, Garnacho's been great and he's been given a good opportunity. Why does Pellistri not get good opportunity? Because he's looked good every time he's come on the pitch. So I know it looks like he's close to a green or low move, but if it was my opinion, I don't think it'll happen. I think Ten Hag will probably start Anthony. If not, he'd start Sancho, which I wouldn't be against Sancho starting, but if it was my opinion, I would be starting Pellistri. I think he deserves it after some of the performances off the bench he's put in. Atkhill also says, totally supports Ten Hag. This season is on the club. Yep, I support Ten Hag fully. I think people turning on him now. It's just massive reactionary statements coming out. I know Ricky's already said he wants Ten Hag out, but I think Ricky's not been happy with the manager not picking his favourites for a while now, to be honest, and he's kind of, you know, seen these first 2 results and he's got a bit of a hot head on the back of it. But if anyone's questioning Ten Hag now, you absolutely have the right to question him. There's no doubt about that. He's made decisions I don't agree with. I think he's made subs too late. I think his signings have been a little bit questionable, some of them, and I think he's too stubborn. I'm questioning him massively. Am I completely behind him, and do I think he's the best manager to take us forward, and do I think we'll eventually come good, and do I think he has credit in the bank off the back of last season? Absolutely. So we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But everyone, that is the 2 p.m. show. Højlund debut delay, maybe now, with the news that we got in from Goldbridge. Spending €15 million probably on Vlachodimos, Benfica keeper, as a backup option. Makes my head hurt, but that looks like it's the way it's been going. Also news, obviously Brandon Williams has left the club on a season-long loan with an option to buy. Also talking about what we do for this Forest game and see what you guys would do as well. Make sure you get your comments in the chat below. But I'll say it here and I'll say it now. I'm getting frustrated. I don't think we'll bring anybody in but a backup keeper, because I don't think we're going to sell Donny. It's gone so cold on that subject. It's gone so cold. And I just think that's going to be an issue for us. But we've got to get behind the team for Saturday. We have to get a result. Next few games coming up, by the way, guys. After Forest at home, we have to win. Arsenal away, which is going to be ridiculously tough. Brighton at home, who were the last team to beat us at home and look brilliant, have started the season off looking as sharp as ever. Then you've got Palace, who look decent against Arsenal. I know that was at Selhurst Park. We have got Palace at home, and then we've got Brentford as well, who, you know, look good too. So it's going to be a tough up-and-coming fixtures for Manchester United. We have to win against Forest. So let me know in the comments what team you would go with. Are you worried going into the back end of the window about the likes of not being able to get Amrabat in, the likes of looking like we've got no options really to go for, considering the state of play, the fact that we can't sell players at Manchester United? What are your worries going into the last couple of weeks of the transfer window? Make sure you let me know. But everyone, we will bring updates as they come. Got a couple of interviews lined up for next week as well with some journalists, which will be interesting to get into. But make sure you stay tuned for all the latest Manchester United news, and anything coming out, of course, we'll bring to you here on the United Stand. Before we go, Chris says it'll be funny if Elanga has a great game. Well, Ricky will probably be cheering on for the sidelines, won't he, if anyone's been looking at his Instagram. But thank you everyone for joining us. Make sure you hit a like on the video and try and stay as positive as you can. I know it's hard looking at this club and what we're doing in the later stage of the window, but try and stay positive, and hopefully we see Højlund at least on the bench on Saturday, but I'm not getting my hopes up. See you on the next one, everyone. Have a lovely day.